Okay, so before I get started, I wanted to show you around here because this place, you probably look around and say, "Yeah, his house is really junky." Well, I'm in the storage room at the farm. This is just a bunch of junk here. The stuff that's accumulated. Okay, let's get started here. So I appreciate everyone that did come back to follow this, or maybe it's the first time you've seen what's going on. So what I'm doing is trying to explain the UFO phenomenon. And I made a video last week, and I'm trying to express that our senses don't show us the complete truth about the world. So if you've ever seen a optical illusion, you can kind of get that notion of what I'm saying. Maybe there's some that you look at and you got to stare at and change your focus here and there until you finally a new picture pops out. Some of them, the picture looks different from the beginning until you look at it at a different angle or something. But there's all kinds of optical illusions. The reason why those work, and the reason why the people with the sleight of hands work, the street magic guys, is that you just don't see everything. It seems like you see everything. Everybody knows the story about the gorilla walking across the stage, and you never saw the thing. And how obvious is that? A gorilla walks across the stage. So that's my point. You don't see all there is to see. We get a little bit of information, and then our mind fills in the blanks. And you can see that whenever you look at an optical illusion. Your senses are terrible. They give you plenty to survive on, but they don't give you enough to make this leap that we're going to do. You with me? Okay. One other thing I want to talk about is Einstein's relativity, or general relativity, the one where he talks about everything's in your perspective. So it all depends on your point of view. If you're sitting in a car driving down the road, it seems to you that you're sitting still and the world's moving. Somebody on the outside of the car looks at you as you're moving and they're sitting still. And both of you are right. Literally. How can that be? That Einstein taught us about is that space and time are a thing. It's they're one thing, and time is a physical object, a physical thing that you can stretch, compress, bend, distort, things that are all in your perspective. And the fact that we really don't understand time or gravity or mass causes us to have a really distorted point of view on reality. Of course, we all understand reality: mass, time, gravity. These things are all like interwoven. You can't really pull those things apart. And in other words, when you have a large mass, your gravity's going to be there. That large mass and gravity is distorting time. They're all just right. You can't, tease them apart. The atom being a solid ball surrounded by electrons that look kind of like the world and the sun and the solar system all inside a little atom. All that is just hogwash, and none of it is even close to what's happening. There's the atom, and all the atoms are the same except for they have different numbers of electrons or protons or neutrons, or the stuff is all the same. They're quarks, neutrons, protons, electrons. What is an object? What is what are we starting at? What is the building block here? And it ends up the building block of mass and matter is a wave. It's a probability wave at that, meaning that an object, a solid object like an atom, a particle cannot be in only one place at one time. They're full of empty space. 0.0001% of the atom is a solid piece of mass. And that solid piece of mass is really quarks. Those little bitty solid pieces of mass are probabilities. They don't really exist the way we think they do. I know physicalists will argue that point, but you look at it yourself. Spend enough time trying to figure out what mass is, and you tell me you come to a different conclusion. You can't handle the truth. Okay, so a couple of stories I wanted to talk about. These are going to be brief. But I do have a story I'm going to tell you that I shouldn't be putting on the internet, but I'm going to. But that's later. Right now I want to tell you a story about an old movie I saw a long time ago, science fiction. Think what you might about science fiction, but it has an uncanny way of showing up in your reality. You know, like the flip phones that were on Star Trek when I was a kid. That was science fiction. Now it's old news. Or so many things. I can't even tell you how many things in science fiction ended up being reality eventually. So, back to the story. Forbidden Planet. Yeah, Forbidden Planet. Walt Disney, I think, did it. I think he even played in it. Anyway, there was a planet that had been occupied previously that was discovered by this scientist that discovered this learning machine that increased people's knowledge and their brain's ability 100%, or whatever, 1,000,000%, whatever it was. And they got to where they could use their brain so well, their brains would cause things to happen, to manifest. And it ends up, you know how people have this kind of dark side to all of us. They would manifest their darkest, deepest fears, and these monsters that were unstoppable would materialize and wipe them all out. That was long in the past, and then another civilization comes along, a group that finds this planet, and they inhabit it with a small outpost, and this scientist discovers that machine, and he starts, you put little electrodes on your head and all this, and he starts, amplifying his brain, and so the others. Ends up, these monsters come out and start wiping them all out. All the way till there's only this one man and his daughter left on this planet. Because he's left because he realized what was happening. They were manifesting these things in their brain that were attacking him. Okay, that's that story. Okay, so this next story I'm going to tell you is it's even a little bit further out there because it's not science fiction. It's, I think it's fact. It's NDEs, near-death experiences. Think what you might about them, but lots and lots of people have these things all over the world. And they have similar stories to tell. And a lot of science has tried to say, well, it's just what happens when you lose oxygen to the brain and all this. But when a neuroscientist has this happen to them, a brain surgeon, and he recognizes the difference, and he says, no, that is definitely not what's happening. As a matter of fact, there's been many doctors that had this happen to them, and they say, no, that is impossible. It's not oxygen depletion. So think of it what you may, but I want to tell you a little story about it. Besides what's coming later, I want to tell you about a friend of mine that had one of these. This story is about Christians, devout Christians that have NDEs. Now, I don't want to upset any Christians. I don't want to be disrespectful, because I certainly respect everybody's faiths. But I noticed something about NDEs, because, like I said, a friend of mine had one of these. Actually, a few friends have had some experiences, but anyway. These devout Christians having NDEs. When you hear of a bad trip on an NDE, experience where these people went to hell, everyone I've heard tell a story like that, they were devout believers, devout Christians. And I've heard many atheists have these things and say, the universe is love. Love, love, love. That's it. There's a God. He loves me. Blah, blah, blah. But the ones that have this bad hellish trip were Christians that had really strong faith. And I tell you this because I'm not saying all Christians have a bad NDE, but the ones that do seem to all be like that. The reason why I want to tell you that is because the first story I was telling you about that thing in your brain that can develop and manifest the monster, I think that's what does it. When you have a bad trip, a bad NDE, you go to hell, it's something that you're doing to yourself. You've got some deep set, I don't want to offend anybody, but you got some deep set images that maybe I want to call it guilt, and maybe you don't even you want to do everything right in your religion. Maybe you're focused so hard on that because you know you've done something that you can't forgive yourself for, or something like that. Something is happening in that regard, where their mind is causing them to have this bad trip. Because one of these Christian ladies that this happened to, while she was in hell, near-death experience, she realized what was happening. She said, I'm doing this to myself. And she stopped it, and she was in heaven. Blink. Just like that. What does that say? One last thing. Thanks for watching. Do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe if you hadn't. Follow this set of videos, because by the time we get to the end of this, I'm hoping that this is going to reveal to you something that is just as important as when Christ came to this earth. I can't think of anything close enough to the potential that I'm going to be talking about here. So let's do it. See ya. Thanks for watching.